Hello, everyone. This is a class on trauma informed interviewing. This is about how to interview trauma survivors. This is part of your narratives of social justice and restitution papers. So, in this class, we'll be talking about certain essential tips and practices uh, for interviewers who interview trauma survivors. Trauma informed interviewing is critical in fields like law enforcement, especially after a crime has been committed. The survivor has to be called in for questioning, need not necessarily be questioned in a police station or any other government office. They can be questioned in any particular um, uh, place where they are comfortable. And it is important that you follow certain tips while interviewing a trauma survivor. This is not just for law enforcers. This is also for people who assess the psychology of the survivors. The most important thing is one has to recognize the effects of trauma. You have to empathize with the survivor. You have to respect and support them. You have to be completely aware of the fact that they have gone through something evil, and it is an experience which is unique to them. And as an interviewer, you can only listen to them while not knowing exactly what happened to them. So, the first thing is that you have to recognize that this person has gone through hell, and it is your duty to be fair to them. And as part of interviewing, one has to consider many things. For example, culture. One has to be very much aware of the culture from which, the culture in which the trauma survivor is a part of. Uh, for example, like language, one has to be fully aware, or one has to be well versed in the language of the trauma survivor, because without there are shortcomings in your understanding of what the survivor is telling you, then the interview will not be a success. You have to effectively question them, and you should know the support strategies which are necessary. Understanding trauma and the ethical considerations related to interviewing. So, as I mentioned earlier, you have to recognize the psychological and emotional effects of trauma. So, we, as an interviewer who hasn't, as a privileged interviewer who hasn't gone through uh, any trauma, and even if if the interviewer himself or herself or themselves have gone through something similar, we cannot compare it with the incident that the interviewee has gone through. So we cannot compare. So, at the least that we can do as an interviewer is that we can recognize that something bad has happened, and that we will never be able to fully understand, even if the interviewee opens up. Approach conversations with empathy. Yes, you have to put yourself in the interviewee's shoes. The person who is getting interviewed is the most important person in the room, and we have to place ourselves in their position. Prioritize the emotional well being of the interviewee. Yes, it depends on the type of questions you ask. Whatever questions you frame, or whatever questions you ask them, make sure that you're not harming them emotionally. So, if they say that they cannot respond to a particular question that you ask, you have to leave it at that. You have to move on to the next question, because you getting the interview from the survivor is not important. What is more important is how comfortable the survivor is discussing the things that you want them to hear. Uh, Ethical responsibility. You have to treat participants with dignity and care and respect. Uh, you need to know that there are certain things that they may not be able to tell you. Probably after they build after you build a rapport with them, they might be able to. But then you should not expect them to reveal every small detail, and you should not ask them leading questions. It is up to you to respect the dignity of the interviewee, and limit your questioning uh, uh, to the comfort zone of the interviewee. A certain and accommodate cultural language needs to avoid misunderstandings. This is something which I mentioned earlier. You need to be well versed in the language of the interviewee, so that you completely understand what they are trying to say. Uh, Recognize varying approaches to storytelling. Yes, uh, this is all about the interviewee. You are not the most important person in this interview. It is the survivor who is the most important person. So if the survivor chooses to tell you their story uh, in a linear fashion or a circular fashion, not many people, not many survivors who has survived trauma be able to narrate everything chronologically. So one must not demand the survivors tell these stories in a chronological manner. They might choose to narrate it in a linear fashion, or they might not. One has to collaborate with cultural experts or service providers for insights. So, if you're not familiar with the culture where this survivor is coming from, then your understanding of what uh, the survivor went through, or what how the survivor responded in certain situations, if you are not aware of the cultural background of the person, then the interviewer may not be able to understand it properly. One has to adapt strategies to be respectful and culturally appropriate. Yes, something which we already discussed. You have to take some precautions. You need to, have an idea as to what triggers the interviewee, and what they are comfortable with. So, choose your words wisely before when interviewing a survivor. One has to ensure a private and comfortable interview setting. Yes, so some interviewees may not be comfortable sitting in a room with someone they don't know. So then you have to make them comfortable, because if they're not in a comfortable setting, they may not be able to open up to you. So it is important that the survivor is comfortable in the particular setting, and it would be better if there is a support person accompanying the interviewee. The survivor will feel more comfortable if they have support, like a friend or a relative who is who supports them. So if the presence of that particular person will ensure, or can ensure, that the survivor is comfortable during the interview. One has to build rapport with a light conversation to put interviewees at ease. Yes, one has to, it is important that you put you put them at ease. Uh, you cannot jump straight away into questioning. That would be a very bad idea. You have to ease them into the conversation, and you should be aware of triggering topics. Yes, if suppose the survivor is triggered by the name of the person who attack them. If that is a trigger, then it would be best not to use the name of the person. Instead, you can use terms like perpetrator, attacker, or something like that. Whatever it is that makes the interviewee comfortable. And also, you should avoid graphic content. When one should never ask for too much detail. One should never mention any other incident or graphic content related to other incidents. Now, providing ongoing support through employee assistance programs. Employee assistance programs are there in offices where employees are provided with mental support, where they can get counseling, and they can confide in a counselor, like we have in our colleges. We have a Jeevani in our colleges, where students can approach this counselor and talk about their problems and get solutions for their problems. Effective questioning. Use open-ended questions to allow interviewees to share in their own words. One should not ask yes or no questions. Now, yes or no questions are binary questions. There are many questions where the interviewee may not be absolutely sure of certain things. They may not be able to say yes or no to questions. So questions must be open-ended, where they have the freedom to answer the question in whichever way they find comfortable. Now, when you introduce sensitive topics, you have to do it gently. You cannot just jump into sensitive topics and sensitive questions. You have to use specific phrases to ease them into the conversation. Avoid phrasing that may blame or judge the interviewee. So this is very, very important. You should be very careful when asking questions to the survivor. They should not feel they should not feel that the interviewer is blaming them or judging them. One should not ask questions like, why didn't you try to escape at that point? Why didn't you cry out? Why didn't you run away at that point? These kind of questions are questions which the interviewee might feel is blaming them. So it is best not to ask such questions, because the interviewer does not know, or will never know what went through the survivor's mind at that point in time. So an interviewer cannot be judgmental. Start with supportive questions to set a positive tone. Yes, something which we mentioned, which I mentioned earlier. You have to ease them into the interview. You cannot just jump into the critical details of the incident. You have to just ease them into the interview. Otherwise, the responses will not be according to your liking. During the interview, as I said earlier, you have to maintain a supportive atmosphere, and you should take as much time as possible to build rapport and trust. You have to, interviewing a survivor cannot be confined within a particular span of time. One never knows, how much time the survivor will take to develop a rapport with you. So you cannot set specific times like a 1 hour interview or 2 hour interview like that when you interview a survivor, because you never know how much time the survivor will take to feel comfortable and easy to answer critical questions. Practice active listening and validate interviewees' feelings. Yes, you have to be the listener, because you have to let them finish what they want to say. You have to let them finish their sentences. You should not ask questions in between while they are are now doing stuff, if at all questions come to your mind, you can write them down. But you have to do active listening. Yeah, I mean, ask questions based on what they say, not just passively record their answers to your questions, but you should ask questions based on what they say. Allow interviewees to guide the conversation. Yes, in this interview, it is the survivor who is the captain. They are the ones who lead the interview and not you. So, as I said earlier, you cannot go to interview a survivor with a set of 20 questions and hope to ask all those 20 questions and get answers for all the 20 questions. You should not be stubborn. You may not be able to ask all those 20 questions because depending on the psychological and emotional condition of the survivor, you may have to let go of some questions, or you may have to rephrase or reframe some of your questions, and you may have to add new questions based on the answers of the survivor. So it is not who decide the span or the of the interview, or the number of questions, or the length of the answers. It is entirely up to the survivor. They are the ones who captain this particular ship. Approach difficult topics delicately, which was already mentioned. You have to be very delicate when discussing the incident and the ensuing details. So, post interview support. So, if you feel that the survivor needs more support, then one has to offer. One has to offer support. One can often offer counseling, just like I mentioned earlier. Then, if this is about something which happens in an office, then it should be made sure. One should make sure that whatever the interviewee or the survivor said about the incident, it should be safe with the interviewer. If it is about an incident which happened in the office and action needs to be taken, not all employees need to know about what happened. A few of them probably can have a discussion and decide on further action if there is a perpetrator involved. So you have to respect the privacy of the interviewee. If they do not want the incident to be in public, then it need not be or should not be shared among other employees. Whereas proper action should be initiated by the authorities. Reflect on experiences to refine trauma-informed practices. Yes. So once every interview with a survivor is a learning, is a learning curve for the interviewer, because every time you learn something new, and you decide, okay, this is something which I should not ask, or this is something which I should rephrase in another way. So the interviewer should learn something from each interview they do. Provide interviewers with a support system for mental readiness. Yes, people who work in news channels and newspapers or any media, those interviewers should be trained specifically to talk to trauma survivors, because these people should be trained to ask specific questions in a specific manner. It is entirely different from asking questions to politicians or sports persons or movie stars. This is something which is entirely different. This interview is not the normal interview. This is something different, and you need to know how exactly to do that interview. So that is it. Thank you.